Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. My name is Tanya. It's 2 days after I started this video. I'm just doing the intro now. But what happened was I made a double batch of bread dough, one which we made into rosemary garlic bread, and I took it to a dinner last night where some friends and we got together, had dinner, and it was a big hit. As best I could tell, it was almost all gone by the time we left. But half of it I used to make just a plain loaf of French bread, which we turned into a cheesy olive French bread. Now I say turned into because we only did the first part of it. We made the bread, we split the bread in half, we made the spread for it, put it on there. But tonight I'm going to bake that off and show you a final product. So you'll see bits and pieces from the initial video that we made because I made the double batch of dough. And somebody might say, where's the instructions to the dough? Well, we're going to try to include that too, along with the recipe in the description. So go with us as we make some cheesy olive French bread. And again, this is not low calorie. You're looking in the wrong direction for that one, but it is good. Okay, we're using our big mixer today. And I haven't had this all along. I just got this as a birthday gift from my husband, which was huge because this is actually something I'm going to use. And the reason I wanted this, there's nothing wrong with my KitchenAid mixer except for the fact that I can make one loaf of bread at a time. This can hold 5 loaves of bread, dough worth 5 loaves of bread. So I'm pretty pumped about that. All right, first thing we're going to do is put some warm, not hot water in here. I'm putting 2 cups in because each loaf requires a cup of water. Oil in my spoon so the honey will release a little bit better. We're going to put a couple of tablespoons of honey in this. French bread isn't normally very sweet, but we want our yeast to have something to eat. So we're going to feed it honey instead of sugar. Into that, we're going to put a few teaspoons of yeast. Each one takes about 2.5 teaspoons, but I'm only going to do maybe 4 teaspoons. You don't normally always, you double everything, but you don't necessarily have to double the yeast because it's a living thing. It's just going to be eating, making these bubbles, and making the bread rise, so you don't necessarily have to double exactly the yeast. It's just one of those things you kind of play around with, especially if you're going to put this in the refrigerator and let it sit for very long at all. If you're going to do a cold first rise on it, and it will get plenty of loft by doing that. All right, we're going to sit there, let this sit here and get foamy for just a bit, and then we'll continue with our process. All right, I can tell that my yeast is active because it's nice and foamy. Let me see if I can get this over here. I know this is kind of fiddly when I do this, but I want you to be able to see what I'm looking at. So you can see that some of it's still dry in there, but the one that's in the liquid and is kind of waking up, it gets foamy around the edge. All right, to this we're also going to add 1/4 cup of oil. I have extra virgin olive oil. You can use butter if you want to. There's really not a lot of oils that won't work in this. To this, we're also going to add 6 cups of flour. I want to go ahead and move that hook out of the way. All right, so to this, we're going to add about let's go with 3 teaspoons or equal to 1 tablespoon of salt. And this is just pink Himalayan salt. Turn this on and let it run for, we'll let it run for just a few minutes and let it get hydrated. We'll let it sit and then we'll turn it back on for a longer length of time. I'm just going to turn it on low speed. All right, turn that off for just a minute. I want to feel it just to make sure it feels right, and it does. And it's pretty much cleaned the entire bowl. So we're gonna let this sit here just a bit, then we'll turn it back on and let it run for about 25 minutes. Normally, if this were my KitchenAid, and I would say if you're working with a KitchenAid, let it run for about 40 minutes. This is just different. It has more dough hooks to it. It just works the gluten up a lot faster. Don't let it run for 40 minutes. Let this run for about 25. But if you have a KitchenAid, let it run for about 40 minutes. But we're gonna let this sit here and just allow the flour to hydrate, and then we'll turn it back on in just a bit. We've allowed our dough to rest for about 5 minutes. I'm keeping the lid on. If you don't have a lid, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect it. I just like having the lid on it because, you know, stuff flying out. All right, going to turn this back on. Still on a low speed, even though this is like a high speed. Well, actually not a high speed, more like a medium speed on the KitchenAid. That's as slow as it'll go. So this machine is really powerful. It really is. All right, going to turn it on low speed. I'm going to run this about 25. If you have a regular mixer like a KitchenAid stand mixer, let it run for about 40. And we'll be back. I think our bread is mixed. That is a sticky dough. All right, so we're going to take about half of this dough. This is the first time I've ever done 2 loaves and then turned one into something else because I hadn't had the mixer that long. I just can't do multiple loaves in my KitchenAid. And that's all I've had up to this point. I better unplug this before the thing starts up and scares me to death. I'm just going to be eyeballing this and getting about half of this dough. Now I could weigh it on my digital scale. And if you're trying to be super accurate, like if you have 2 customers and they both want a loaf of bread and you don't want to dare give one a larger loaf than the other one, then you'll want to weigh it to make sure you have exactly half. All right, I'm going to take this bowl off. It just kind of snaps in there. Actually, it's kind of a twist and lock. That's what it is. That's the word I was trying to think of, twist and lock. All right, so that's about half of our dough. I'm going to put it over here in that bowl. All right, we have let our dough do its first rise for an hour. I'm going to start with the dough that doesn't have rosemary in it because I don't want my unflavored dough to have the taste of rosemary if some kind of gets caught on the countertop and it gets rolled up in there. So here is our baking sheet. I put a clean piece of parchment in there. If you have trouble with your parchment not lying down and behaving, like it keeps rolling up like that, just take and wad it up like that, then flatten it out. And if it still doesn't behave, squirt a little bit of just a light misting of water on it, and it will lay down just like it knows what to do. All right, let me get my rolling pin here. Move this one out of the way. I better get a bench scraper. This looks like it's clinging to the bowl. I'm going to put just a tiny dusting of flour on the countertop because I don't want a lot of flour on the bread itself. I just want it to keep it from sticking to the countertop. All right, you don't have to knead this or anything. It's already been kneaded, all it needs to be kneaded. So basically we're just going to roll it out and shape it into a loaf. Now I think I actually left more in the rosemary dough than I took out, which is fine because this is going to be making something else that's going to be for a smaller group of people. I'm going to get this out of the way because I don't want any more flour to be on the outside of this bread. And if you can roll it into a rectangle, that's great. If you roll it into an oval shape, that's fine. If you roll it into what looks like the state of Pennsylvania, that's fine too. This is pretty forgiving on the shape. All right, roll it out, and then we're just going to take and loosely start the first of it. And you might want to consider also the length of your pan. You don't want it longer than your pan, so I can kind of eyeball and see about what my pan length is. I'm used to working with those particular pans. But if you have a shorter pan, you want to be concerned about it because you don't want to go over the edge, of course. Now you can, if you just have one loaf, you can do it at a diagonal if you accidentally roll it out too big, and that's fine too. Okay, kind of give it a little squeeze to seal the edges. We're just going to pick it up and lay it on there like that. Sorry, I didn't even have that in view. I'll look up to the camera every once in a while. I'm like, oh, holy cow, they can't see what I'm doing. All right, so there is our one that doesn't have any rosemary in it. All right, got our bread right here, and it has risen for just a little over an hour. Okay, I'm glad I put that part raised up in the center because otherwise it would be, they'd be touching. All right, I'm going to show you what we're doing right now. This is just simply an egg wash, and all this does is just make it shiny. There's no taste to it. There's no taste difference. It might hold in the moisture a minimal amount, but whatever. If you have an egg white, I'm going to use the white part of this. I just have a fresh egg right there. I just broke into this container. But yeah, it'll just make it shiny, and it'll look really pretty too. So we're going to make our gashes in it after we brush the egg white on. Be careful not to deflate it. Just don't want to be rough with it. And my egg's not going to go to waste because I'll use this as an egg for breakfast some morning. All right, we're going to take our very sharp small knife and simply make gashes in it. Obviously not all the way through, but this is going to give it the freedom to expand and not break the crust open and it look like a volcano crack down the middle of it. All right, the oven is preheated, so we're going to put this into the oven. Raise this up just a bit. Okay, pop this in the oven. I have my oven preheated for 350 degrees. And I'll set it for about 20 minutes. I can always add more to it, but I can't take time off once it gets to that point. And we'll see what it looks like in 20 minutes. Timer just went off. We're going to take our bread out of the oven. And this is what it looks like. Let me show you side by side what these look like. This one's really tiny. I didn't realize I was getting that much more for the rosemary bread, but that's fine because it'll all be used. Okay, this is what we're gonna do with our second loaf of bread. We did our rosemary garlic bread, have that cooling, setting aside. So we have this loaf of French bread, and although it's a little small, it's smaller than what I would normally make a loaf of French bread, but that's okay. Because the filling we're gonna put on this, we can use part of it and then just save some of the other for later on, make another loaf of French bread. So in here, we have 6 tablespoons of butter. I've had it out in the sunroom, and it is softened. You can see I can just smash it in the bowl. So to that, we're gonna add about close to 3/4 of a cup, probably closer to 2/3 of a cup of mayonnaise. And I'm a little bit stingy with my mayonnaise because when I use it, I just gotta make some more because I make my own mayonnaise. And if you don't know how to make mayonnaise, we've got your video, and it's super easy to do, especially if you have an immersion blender. All right, I'm just gonna eyeball about 2/3, 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. Okay, that's all I'm giving it. It's too valuable. And it's not hard to make, it's just, I have to set this time aside to do it, and then I gotta wash the immersion blender, so I just am a little stingy with it. But when you gotta use it, you gotta use it. And this is one of those recipes that you just gotta use it. All right, we'll get this all mixed up. This is not a low-calorie food. Do not mistake this for diet food. It's not. To this, we're going to add 16 ounces of mozzarella that I've shredded. Get you a 16-ounce block of preferably whole milk mozzarella, and shred it up. Do not buy pre-shredded. It has cellulose on it, and it just doesn't melt and stay smooth like shredded, hand-shredded mozzarella. Just skip the pre-shredded kind of pretty much anything that I can think of. All right, we're going to stir this around. I think the mayonnaise and the butter, other than flavor, it's just going to make the other ingredients stick together so it doesn't fall off the bread. But this is one of those items that if you bring it to a party, people will start eating it and it will all be gone. So don't worry about taking any home. It's not going to happen. It is very, very filling, but it is delicious. It's kind of hard to stop eating it once you get started. Not only is there melty cheese in it, but we have olives and mushrooms, and it is delicious. Okay, kind of got that stirred up, mixed up. We need 8 green onions, and I went out to my yard where I have green onions growing in my garden, and I grabbed these. So we're just going to chop these up. And they don't have to be chopped up super small, but just enough where you can stir them up in the cheese mixture. I don't think you can see that, but I'm just dumping them in a bowl. In a bowl with the cheese and the mayonnaise, of course. Maybe this is why we needed more mayonnaise, is because it has so much other stuff in it, you need to be able to stir it up. That's okay, we'll make it work. right, to that we're also going to add 8 ounces of canned mushrooms. And I bought the small cans, which are 4 ounces. So I just have 2 of those. I drained them, and then I just rough chopped them. You can see where this is going to be way too much filling for that little tiny loaf of bread, but that's okay. Like I said, I'll make another one this week and we'll have 2 of them. Not to be wasted. Okay, 4.5 ounces of black olives, canned black olives. You drain them well and then you chop them up. Okay, this is what this looks like. Now let me get a different knife. And we're going to slice our French bread lengthwise and crosswise. I think that's what this is called. And try to get the top and bottom as close to the same thickness as you can. All right, and this is what the center of our French bread looks like. And then we're going to just start piling it on here. Now, I probably need to put this parchment down because I'm going to be wrapping this up in foil later on, and I don't want the foil touching my bread. Hear the doggies in the background. See Zoe back there? She's been at the groomer all day. She's so glad to be home. She's worn out. Miss Nellie gives them a run for their money when she goes in and gives them a bath and does their nails and clips their hair and all that stuff. But they look so good when they're done because they look like 2 little mops when I took them over there this morning. All right, now ideally, if we were going to serve this right away, I would take this, put it on a baking sheet, leave it on the parchment probably because that cheese is going to melt and it's going to go everywhere. But I would put it in the oven. Let me see what my baking time is. I have this written down here. 375 for about 15 minutes. So that's what we'd do if we were baking it right now. We're not going to serve this until tomorrow at lunch. So what I'm going to do is prep this part ahead of time. I'll cover it up, put it in a pan and stick it in the fridge. That way I'll just take it out, pop it in the oven. I'll still have the oven on about 375, and I'll probably cook it for closer to 20 to 25 minutes just to make sure everything's hot all the way through. But what I'm going to do is wrap this up and then end this video, and then when you see this the next time, I'll be taking it out of the oven. And I'll have on different clothes because it's a different day. Not that you're watching this to look at my clothes, but I'm just saying it'll still be the same item that we're cooking, just a different day because we're not serving it right now. Okay, so we still have quite a bit left over, enough to make a whole nother loaf of French bread and have this again. So this is what it looks like for now. And then tomorrow, when I bake it off, I'll finish the video and you can get a look at it when it comes out of the oven. This is going to be so good. It's so filling. It's so delicious. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. So my oven is preheated to 375. Just took this out of the refrigerator, and I'll show you what this looks like. Let's get this back a bit so you can see what we're dealing with. It's hard to get everything in the picture that I want in the picture and block out stuff that just are distracting, like a dog bed. Nobody wants to see a dog bed. It's not messy, I'm not ashamed I have a dog bed. There's just nobody wants to see that. Okay, so I put foil over the top of it to keep it from drying out, but I also put parchment over it so the cheese would not come off. So this is what it looks like before it goes in the oven, and we're going to put it in there for about 15 minutes and see what it looks like after that. So the timer's set, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, the timer went off on the oven, but I've added another 10 or 12 minutes to it because it just wasn't done enough, probably to compensate for the coldness of the refrigerator. So if you make it fresh and you put your filling on there and then put it in the oven right away, it might take 15 minutes. So let's get this out. All right, this is what it looks like. This is our cheesy olive French bread made with our homemade French bread in the first part of the video. I have a helper. Do you want to stand on the stool? Okay. All right, and don't touch it. It's hot. Okay. Thanks for watching. Recipe is in the description, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Can you wave at him, Maddie? Bye.